Hey guys, Michael LaFido. In this month's video, we're going to talk about post NAR Department of Justice big settlement August 17th, 1 month later. Where are we at? And the three options that buyers have, really the three new options sellers have. But before we go into that, who you work with matters. Recently, we sold a home in South Wheaton, and we netted the sellers well over $20,000 more than the other agent they were considering suggested asking price. So again, who you work with matters. You want to make sure you're working with an agent that's got local roots, got the finger on the pulse. They know what's going on. They know if there's a void in the marketplace, and they have a comprehensive marketing plan locally and outside the area. All right, getting back to this month's topic, we're talking about Department of Justice and the National Association of Realtors, August 17th, last month, big settlement. I'm going to start out with the three options buyers have. So now buyers need a written agreement to tour homes officially. The exception to the rule is an open house. So if an agent's hosting an open house, any buyer can go through an open house without a written agreement. So there's three things buyers need to be aware of. Number one, you don't need a written agreement to tour an open house. That's always been the case. But the two things that I'm going to share next are new. The second is you need, as a buyer, you need to have some written agreement in place with a licensed real estate agent to see homes individually. So you have two options. One agreement is a buyer broker agency agreement. That's a long-term agreement. There's a definitive start date and an end date. There's an agent named, and compensation is disclosed. In other words, you'd be willing to pay them X if the seller won't compensate them. Okay, so that is you're committing to them. There's a term included. So that is the second thing that I wanted to share with you. Again, buyer agency agreements were not required by law before August 17th. They are now. Now, the third is not as long of a commitment. It's more of a showing commitment. So in other words, you're agreeing to compensate potentially a buyer's agent if you write an offer on this property. In other words, it's a one-time showing agreement versus a long-term commitment. Let me show you what that looks like. So the brokerage I'm with, they have simplified this. So literally, if somebody comes through an open house, they say, hey, I want to go look at that home across the street. I don't have to run to the office. I can have some printed forms, or I can literally, if I get a signed call and somebody wants to see a home in 20 minutes and I'm driving, could pull over, say what's your full name, and I'm going to text you right now, and literally they can electronically sign it. I'm going to share with you how easy we're making it for our clients. So we send you something via text, you click it. This talks about, hey, 8 reasons to work with us. Then you'll see understanding the updated process of real estate transactions. So again, it talks about the written agreements before touring homes, which we're covering. We're talking about direct compensation. And the third component is we no longer can disclose to a buyer's broker how much they're going to get paid if we get a deal done. It's actually less transparency, but don't get me started on that. So then literally we will send over the agreement, which you can download and view, or you can sign it. It's that simple. We've simplified things. So if somebody wants to see a home, we can literally text you something, whether it be you personally or somebody that calls on one of our listings. We need an agreement with them signed ahead of time, unless it's an open house. And so we've simplified the process. Everything's done electronically via text or email, and we could do it literally. I timed myself before doing this, and I filled it out and sent it off in 34 seconds. So you can review it and sign it electronically. So again, those are the three changes since August 17th. Now that we're a month past, again, you don't need anything different if you're going through an open house, but to tour a home individually, the second option, which I went over, is more of a long-term commitment with you and an agent, clearly stating what you're willing to pay them if the seller doesn't pay them. And then the third option is what I call a showing agreement. Hey, I don't know you that well. I don't want to commit to you that well, but I want you to show me this home, and I'll compensate you if the seller doesn't compensate you for this specific property. So those are the three options for a buyer. Again, who you work with as a buyer matters. Make sure you work with an agent that knows the market, has off-market properties, and knows if the market is trending upward or downward. Now let's talk about a month later. What are the three options for sellers? I put together this nice fancy graph here, and If in the past, if you were selling a home, you would pay, let's just say I'm representing you, I'm called the listing broker, the listing agent. In the past, you would agree to pay the listing as a seller, you'd pay the listing broker. Now, if another agent's involved, which 9 out of 10 times there is 2 agents involved, I would go ahead, let's just say you're paying X. I would pay a portion of X to the buyer's broker. That's how the old way of doing it before August 17th. You as the seller paid the listing broker, and if there's another agent involved, which 9 out of 10 times there is, I would pay them, and we would disclose what we're paying them in the multiple listing service. We can no longer disclose, and so that's the old way. The new way, as a seller, you have 3 options. The seller still is going to pay the listing broker. That's option 1. And you can say, I'm not paying a buyer's broker. The buyer has, that's your second option. Or the third option is you say, you know what? I'm going to pay them, and I'm going to disclose what I'm going to pay them. Okay. So again, you could say I'm not paying them. The second is, yes, I will pay as a seller. I will pay the buyer's agent or the buyer's broker directly. Again, the old way, the listing or the selling broker would pay the buying broker. That's no longer, you can't, we're advising we don't do that. Not only do we not disclose it, but we are advising the seller pays both us individually and the buyer's broker. So the third option that you as a homeowner have is, so again, 1, you could pay the buyer's broker. 2, you could say I'm not paying him. Or the third is saying I'll pay him, but I'm not going to disclose what I'm going to pay him. Write me an offer, and depending on your offer, ask for it in the offer. So those are the 3 options. So again, as a buyer, hopefully when you are being represented, hopefully the seller will pay your buyer's broker, so it won't cost you anything. Okay, but to see a home as a buyer, individual home, you need an agreement in place. Now, there's some part-time agents out there that might show you a home. They're breaking the law. They could be code of ethics violation and get into trouble. So again, I hope this is helpful to you. It's a longer video than more of our monthly videos are typically 2 to 4 minutes in length. But again, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I wanted to cover for you as a buyer. You have 3 options. A, you can go through an open house with no written agreement. B, you can commit to an agent with a defined term, start and end. Or 3, you can have a showing agreement where you're just agreeing to compensate them if the seller doesn't for that particular property. As a seller, again, no longer will you just pay one fee and your listing agent will pay the other agent. Now we are recommending you as a seller offer compensation potentially. You don't have to, but if you do, you would compensate the buyer's broker directly versus the listing agent. So you could either disclose a set amount, you don't have to disclose, or you could say no. But at the end of the day, even if you say no and you have 2 offers and one is significantly higher, and that buyer's broker is saying, would you compensate me? And you'd still net a lot more than the other one that says, no, you don't have to pay me. It's a numbers game, right? And so you got to do what's best for you and your family. But at that example, you would net more to work with an agent. But again, you always have the option. You always had the option in the past, but things have changed a little bit with disclosure and transparency. So Michael LaFido, make it a great day. And if you know of anybody thinking about buying or selling, they need a second opinion, reach out, make it a great day, and prove others wrong. Thank you.